Happy Monday, Facebook Live. This is a depiction of what is left of Neo Hyrule, once a great kingdom in the fictitious world of my Cities Skylines universe. It is now but a flaming, distant memory. And meanwhile, I'm Mike George. Welcome to a special edition of Facebook Live with Mike George. Oh yes, I guess I can adjust the hat here. So, I have been splendid, BT dubs. It is the 8th of March, 2021, AD, Monday, Monday morning. And so I have found myself magically in the real world city of Columbus, Ohio. So I've been really into the art of storytelling lately, particularly with the City Skylines game that I've been sort of running, managing an entire fake kingdom of 170,000 Hylian citizens. So I have felt, of course, as their benevolent leader, or I should say their former benevolent leader, I feel compelled to share the story of the 170 plus thousand Hylian citizens who have decided to take it upon themselves to exile their benevolent leader from their kingdom. So this is the story of Neo Hyrule. So, I'm a Zelda fan, obviously, or maybe not so obvious to some of you who don't know me. Brandon knows I'm a Zelda fan. Hi, Brandon. And so, Neo Hyrule was a passion project of mine. Neo Hyrule was a kingdom that I constructed in order to house the Hylian citizens, I should say the Hylian refugees, after the destruction of Hyrule. And so, as an environmentalist, as a humanitarian, I felt it was my duty to create this fictitious kingdom of Neo Hyrule for these people to find homes and to start new lives, and so that is where we are. And so this is what happened in Neo Hyrule. So when we all, for some of you guys who have followed along to the story, you might already be aware. But this all started out with a mysterious terrorist incident. And what happened was the Great Zora Dam was breached. Now, I have posted a lot of maps and whatnot illustrating the world of Neo Hyrule. And so for some of you that are more studious with the geography and the terrain of Neo Hyrule, you'll know that the Great Zora Dam, as its name implies, is basically the giant barrier that holds back the entire water supply for all of Neo Hyrule, as well as the entire underwater city of Zora's domain. And so you can imagine how much disruption that caused when the dam was bombed one day by a group of people that we don't know yet. Maybe Antifa, maybe, who knows. Nonetheless, the dam was breached and it caused a flood of epic proportions, flooding all of the city of Hylia, and an unknown number of citizens had perished. And, turns out that, when you perish in Hyrule, you don't just disappear. Your spirit remains, and, though your body is fucked up, your spirit remains, and your spirit ascends, leaves the vessel of your Hylian body, and in this case, it collected. All of these souls and spirits had collected into into where the water, all the floodwaters had collected. As all the floodwaters killed people and drowned people and buried cities, it washed away with it all the spirits of the people. And so all the spirits of these Hylian citizens, the citizens of Old Hylia, I should say, were swept into basically a giant cesspool lake of shit, known as Death Valley. Death Valley. So Death Valley is located in Old Hylia. Basically, it's a giant, as the name implies, it's a giant valley, and it's where all the spirits of the Old Hylian citizens washed into. And so, naturally the Hylian citizens are pissed off and kind of bewildered at what the fuck happened. How did a dam break? And so there was, there were a lot of, investigations, a lot of politics, a lot of blame, a lot of finger pointing, and to this day nobody really knows who blew up Zora's Dam. But anyways, after the floods, after the waters receded, the Hylian citizens rebuilt. But nobody quite trusted each other anymore, You see, all these various cities and regions of Neo Hyrule once worked together. They used to work together. They used to manage that dam together, as a matter of fact. There was a big region-wide development and maintenance fund, which you don't see that very often these days in the real world. Maintenance funds. Nobody likes to maintain shit. And so, nonetheless, the citizens of Hyrule had worked together to maintain this dam. And so when the dam breached, it was obviously a, not just a physical breach of the dam itself, which led to the tragic demise of probably hundreds of thousands of people, but it was also a moral breach of the covenant that these people of Hyrule had taken together to protect, to basically protect the kingdom. Protect the kingdom first and foremost from a fucking dam that breaks. And so, regardless, after the floods, these cities rebuilt, but they didn't trust each other. And so they all kind of rebuilt with very localized and very isolated economies. You had Hylia. Hylia was a vision of its former, kind of a shadow of its former past. It's now New Hylia. It's now ruled by a viceroy, kind of a self-appointed governor. And, it's all right. It's doing all right. It's a very totalitarian state. People aren't quite sure what to think about the government. It's kind of like China, I guess you can kind of compare it to. And so this new government had basically been established in New Hylia, basically to quickly rebuild. Let's be honest, it was well intentioned. Nobody had time to sit down and write a constitution, for God's sake, and there wasn't even a fucking parliament building anymore. And so, first thing we had to do is rebuild the parliament building, and of course, some rich guy decided to do that, and he's now the governor, and that's kind of how that happened. So, you can kind of see how New Hylia has faded. Meanwhile, in Kokiri Forest is kind of, it's mainly the Kokiri fairies and elves that dominate the forest there, and so, we had some pretty minor developments there, some emergence of some small villages that were off the radar, at least off the radar to the Hylians, and so they kind of remained in secret. Nobody really visited the fairies, and of course the fairies never left the forest. And so, that's Kokiri Forest. Goron City, similar story. You have the Gorons. They're the mining community. A bunch of primitive-ish cavemen. Though I'd be careful using the word primitive, because it turns out, they're experts at ore mining. And so, it's kind of caused a major issue now, because Goron City has decided to kind of say fuck you to the rest of the Hylian cities, and they have cut off the ore supply to Hylia, and to Hyrule, for that matter. And so, that brings us to Hyrule Castle City, which is the largest city, and former capital of the United Kingdoms of Neo Hyrule, or of Hyrule, really, Old Hyrule. It contains the Temple of Time, the Temple of Light, some of the major academic and sage institutions of Hyrule. So it's basically where all the magicians kind of live, all the politicians, all the, it's sort of our flagship city. And so, Hyrule Castle City has kind of remained intact for the most part. But obviously it influences a much smaller region. And so, they've had some economic troubles because of that. Their ore prices have gone through the roof. The Gorons have embargoed the rest of Hyrule, and so kind of have a spike in energy prices as a result. And so, ironically, this has forced the citizens of Neo Hyrule to kind of think sort of about what they have, and they had a lot of land, and they had a lot of sunshine. And so we took it upon ourselves to build a giant power grid to basically connect. And that's sort of where the story starts for the reemergence of Neo Hyrule. Because you still have all the dams. Despite the tragedy of the Zora Dam, there's a lot of regional reliance on hydroelectricity. And so, when that dam broke, they kind of had to rely on, on what was available, coal, ore, the little dams that were around, the little wind farms that were around. And so it really forced the people of Hyrule to kind of work together because, that's kind of, at the end of the day, everybody needs lights, right? So that's sort of where we leave off with the city of Neo Hyrule. And so, I shouldn't say that, because that's kind of where I took over, and I assumed the position of regional economic overseer for the region of Neo Hyrule, which was sort of a made-up position, and also turns out I was the bitch in charge. Some might say I was a god, some might say I was a humble king, a humble servant of the Lord. Whatever. But nonetheless, I ruled over 170,000 citizens, and I ruled over a lot of shitty things that happened to those people. We lost about 80% of our population during a famine. That actually kind of spurred the start of Lon Lon Ranch. We started really developing our agricultural industry. Also really, that also, again, this really prompted people to connect together. So we had to build train lines to get people their food, and it started a whole process. Turns out when you work together, you can solve anything, right? And so that's where we leave off Neo Hyrule. And so this has been Mike George with a quick update of Neo Hyrule, since I will be exiled for quite a while from my City Skylines game before I get a new computer, essentially. And so this has been an update of Neo Hyrule, coming to you live from the real world of Columbus, Ohio. And I guess which brings us to Mike George and Columbus, Ohio. Bitches, I'll be in Columbus, Ohio for about several weeks before moving back to Portland or somewhere else, wherever I get employed again. So, yes, please see me. And also, if you're in Steubenville in particular and wish to see me for my birthday on the 17th of March, next Wednesday, there's an event for that. So, yes. So on that note, I gave you guys a little update of Neo Hyrule, gave a little bit of update about Mike George's life, and I encourage you guys to come hang out with me if you're in Ohio. So in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this has been Mike George with a special Monday edition of Facebook Live. Have a great week, everybody. Be safe, be splendid, take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.